Hello again, everybody. My name is John D. Healy. I do a podcast. How did I get into podcasting? I produced this book for my friend Tony McGurn, and that's how it all started. He was born in 1941 in Ireland. So a lot of stories from 1941 up until recently. You can buy it on Amazon. It's also on audio for those of you that have problems with your eyesight. Buy it soon before it's banned, but the stories are all true. Some gun running. My sponsors are Liffey Van Lines, a moving company here in New York City, and Liffey Van Lines have been around longer than Jeopardy, longer than the New York City Marathon. Running very, very smooth. Teamwork is the key to their success, and referrals if you do a good job. I always give a shout out to the Irish Examiner USA. It's a newspaper here in the New York City area and beyond. It's brilliant for catching up on events, especially like music. I want to thank Paddy McCarthy for getting me tickets to Oasis, and he has Phil Coulter in his list and other things coming up like that. But events coming up, especially now between now and the end of the year. So irishexaminerusa.com. I do have a guest today, as always, and it's always to have good guests. I will refer back to a couple of podcasts I did last time. I did one about the Irish hunger strike in Ireland, 1981. Bobby Sands and 9 of his friends all died in, well, I hate to use the word in vain, but they died on hunger strike, and that's kind of a sad history of Ireland. I was a student in Dublin at the time. Anyways, let me move along. Today, Jimmy, my young singer, will be in later on to sing a song for us. Meanwhile, I do have a singer and an artist, and his name is Fall Rivers. Fall, good morning.
Good morning, John. How are you? Good to talk.
That's the name of the podcast, Good to Talk. Okay, let's get rocking and rolling with you, like a rock and roll kid. So a little bit of background, because I met you once, and I don't know you yet, but I will get to know you. My audience wants to get to know you. Give us background. Where were you born? Music and art, I guess, is the backdrop.
Oh, well, my story starts in Teaneck, New Jersey. I was actually born there, a little across the water from where we are now. And I was raised by two very young parents who, during 9/11, got really spooked. We lived in Hoboken, New Jersey, across the water. And we ended up in Miami after that.
Okay.
And so I get a lot of my artistic influence from my upbringing in Miami. I ended up living solo for a long time, very young, during their kind of like departure, divorce. And I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot about what I could do. I had a little bit of a background in the arts. I started playing piano when I was young, and I started singing when I was young, when I was about 10 years old. So from there came a love for writing music and playing music. And I went on to do other things, such as I did a lot of chorus, did candlelight processionals in Disney World. I ended up singing in Washington, D.C., and we won states. And from there, I was like, okay, what if I do this, on my own? And so I ended up living in New York for about like 3 months when I was 16 years old. And I was like, oh, I need to stay in the city for these opportunities. I really want to come up and live here for the arts. So I decided to do that. I left Miami after college. I was studying things like genetics and psychology. And I was like, I had an opportunity to go to law school or choose the arts. And I decided, I'm going
to be a lawyer. I said, we don't need a lawyer. I said, we don't need a lawyer. No.
We have a lot of those. We have a lot of lawyers.
We do. Liars.
Yeah.
Okay, continue. So getting back to the music.
Yeah.
Did you go to music school, or where did the piano come out of? Don't tell me
I am self-taught.
Truck.
Yeah, I never went to music school. I am a self-taught artist. I picked up the piano from listening to it. Before the piano, I played the violin, and that was out of an elective class in school. Yeah.
So violin. I did have a violin girl on here, and she started playing the violin when she was only 5 years old. And she has a twin sister, obviously 5 years old. My calculation is good there. I'm not Joe Biden, I'm John D. Healy. So twin and twin. So she was 5 and her sister was 5. And they still play the violin. As a matter of fact, they're both from Bulgaria. One girl can play as far as away in Japan. And the other girl is in New York, a good friend of mine. And they can actually do duet and play the violin together. But the piano, when you mentioned the piano, she plays piano as well, actually. I would hate to have a neighbor that has a piano. That's the son of a bitch of a neighbor to have, playing the piano at midnight. But where did you get the piano? We like Liffey Van Lines. We move pianos. So
Ooh,
where you found the piano? You didn't find it on the side of the road. The piano.
no. For me, the piano started off in school, and
Okay,
my mother wanted a piano. My
okay.
mother,
Was she a school teacher? Was your mother a school teacher?
my mother was not a school teacher. She had been classically trained in piano when she was a child, but unlike her, I did not learn how to read sight music. So, yeah, she wanted one for her, and when I started to play, we were like, I like to put it as dancing dragons. She was the red dragon, I was the blue one. I was the one
Okay,
that learned by ear, and she was the one that could only play by sight.
okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned there you played in Washington. Was that, did you play someplace famous there?
I played. It was we sang at the Holocaust Memorial in
Okay,
Washington D.C. Yeah,
okay,
and
very good.
this was earlier on. I sang at Disney's Candlelight Processional for 2 years straight as the leader of the bass choir, and we
Okay,
won state and regional championships in that division.
very good.
That was coming out of Miami, and that was early.
Well, you so far so good. It's like a song, 3 feet high and rising. You're still a very young person, and you're not related to Joan Rivers. I did
No,
ask you, are you related to Joan Rivers? But you know,
yeah,
you have a lot of her characteristics. You know, very eloquent, and I hope that rubs off on you. She had a charity called God's Love We Deliver. I think you look like a spiritual person. Are you a spiritual person?
yeah. I very much I'm in tuned and all that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Joan Rivers was too, actually. She,
Hmm.
despite her comic sense of humor, and sometimes could hit the low gutter, like myself. Sometimes I've been blamed for using bad language on this podcast. I promise I will not do it today. I will not use the. I will not
You
use the.
can. It's okay.
Well, that's easy for you to say. Who are you in the confessional box? Anyways, we move along. So tell me, that's the music. So you have the piano, you have the violin. Any other instruments you play? You sing, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, singing and writing, those things helped me escape a tumultuous home environment when I was young.
Okay.
So it was something that I continued to do. And I didn't go into painting until a little later on.
Okay. Well, let's stay with the writing for a moment. So when you say writing, like
Mhm.
I had another artist on here like yourself, very talented girl, and she could write poetry in a
Hmm.
second. I could just give her. I gave her a story one time about a lady's walking a dog. Can you write a poem? And she said, yeah. I said, okay, a lady's walking a dog and the dog takes a shit. Can you write a poem? She said, yeah. Actually, I wrote about toilet paper. So do you write poetry first and then transfer it into a song?
For me, it's more or
Lyric, I
less
mean.
the same. Yeah, I don't really need a prompt. It's more about like my thoughts. So if I feel a certain emotion, I have wordplay that runs through my mind, and it's easy for me to put my ideas into paper. And I know how to go from verse to chorus, hook, and then transition that. I can write a song in about 15 minutes or
Okay,
less.
that's a talent. Okay, now I have come across many people both in the music world and the art world. So,
Yeah.
and I really admire all of you because you're all talented. Okay, and I'll get to the art because I can't even draw a straight line. But when you say you transfer, the song is in your head, then you get the
Hmm.
song out of your head and it becomes a lyric. Then the lyric
Hmm.
is words, obviously. And now, how do you put the music to the lyric?
I typically have, because I can expedite the process, I typically have or collaborate with other people who have music already written or are artists or instrumentalists. Yeah.
Okay, so just going back to my own history, because I grew up in a ballroom, so I grew up all my life listening to bands and different show bands and different show bands. Hence, that's why I'm half deaf, but I have a good ear for music and I have a good ear for listening. So when you combine your lyric, which is a story, obviously, like what we're talking about,
Mhm.
and then you add the music. So if it's a happy story, do you put upbeat music? Or if it's a sad, dreary story, do you put sad music?
It depends. I can do both. I like beat music for a little while, but I feel like when I do put a sad connotation to things or it's more realistic, it hits home a little
Hmm.
easier. I can give you some samples of what I I can sing and I can put to music. But yeah, I like to because I have so many lyrics and I can be versatile with them.
Okay.
I like to sometimes put sad things to upbeat music and some positive things to sad music. I like to be both. It's fun.
Okay, that's not a bad thing actually, because like a lot of like down the years, different people have taken different songs. Like you've heard of Willie Nelson, I'm sure. Like Willie Nelson,
Yeah.
you've heard of him? Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. Willie Nelson actually wrote songs for Patsy Cline, and Patsy Cline had a lot
Yes.
of sad, depressing songs like "Walking After Midnight," and they were really, really sad, sad songs. But they became popular and one-hit wonders. Like, have you heard of Leo Sayer?
Yes.
Okay, like one of his one-hit wonders was like I'm a one-man band. So I'm a
Mm.
one-man band, but it's an upbeat song. If you listen to the lyric, it could be a very sad, lonely song. But when he sings it, he's happy to be a one-man band, and
Yeah.
that's cheerful. And
Yeah.
other
It's
people might have heard
yeah.
this. Have you heard of Petula Clark?
I think you mentioned her before,
I probably
but
did.
I'm not sure if I've
She's
heard.
Canadian, but again, she wrote a song called when you're down and lonely and what do, you go downtown. And when you
Hmm.
walk out and you go downtown, it gives you a bit of a lift and a boost. So these are other just like cross references to songs in general. So where do you perform in New York City?
Sorry, you asked where I perform?
Like, do you perform in the city? Where do you play your music?
Well, I've worked for studios and I used to perform when I was younger, say about a couple years after COVID and before COVID. There
Okay,
was a couple of venues down in the village, such
okay,
as Fat Cat, Smalls, and Blue Note.
okay,
And I used to play there with a friend of mine, Robbie Gonzalez.
okay,
He used to play Latin jazz and blues type of
okay.
drums. It was a very good time for me. I used to play. Right now, I'm doing mostly studio work. Do art media services and a couple studios down in Brooklyn. One in
All right.
Williamsburg, I think, is a brand new one. So
Have you heard?
I'm doing more recording work right
Okay,
now, and I'm putting the paintings as more of a public thing.
I want to get to the painting song in a second. Have you heard of the Clancy Brothers? The Clancy Brothers,
Yeah.
probably not. The Clancy Brothers
No.
are the Clancy Brothers are an Irish group, and
No.
they became famous down in the village when they played with Bob Dylan. And what made the
Hmm.
Clancy Brothers famous, would you believe it or not, was their mother, Irish mother, of course, when they were coming to New York, she wasn't aware of the seasons and the temperature, and I guess she thought it might be cold here. So she knitted them all like woolen sweaters. So that was
Mm.
their uniform to play on stage. So they all became famous for wearing a knitted white jumper. Now, I'd hate to think who was doing the
That's
washing.
pretty cool.
Yeah, kind of. I'd hate to know who was doing the washing machine because those things shrink. Anyways, let's get away from the village and the music. Bob Dylan, of course, is a legend in poetry and music and poetry as well. And most of his songs are played on radio. I think he
Hmm.
does one. It goes on for about 16 minutes, and that song is favorite of disc jockeys on radio because that's when they take their coffee break. And you've heard of Donovan, Universal Soldier? So there's so many. Anyways, let's move on to the art. Well, how'd you get into art then?
The art world was a good transition for me. I went from music to art. Around the time that COVID hit in 2020, everybody was kind of shutting up their doors and there wasn't a lot of music venues to play at.
Okay,
So
fair enough.
I had been starting art projects for charity, right? I would donate to St. Jude's and the ASPCA and different funds. And I would sell, 24 by 18 paintings, not for a lot, just for a grand or, 500 at first. And I
That's
realized
not
I had
bad.
a real knack for painting. I could produce art like the art you see behind me. I
Yeah.
can produce that, in a couple hours. And
Okay.
so I kind of was like, all right, towards the end of 2020, I was like, all right, I'm very proficient in this. I'm going to
Oh yeah.
continue. Yeah.
No, I've often had other artists on here, and that's a good question because you answered the question before I asked you, which is good. That proves you are proficient. So I usually ask them how much. A lot of artists don't know how to put a value on their work. Okay, so I have to help them with that, and I say, did it take you 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, or did it take you a week? Or like Nancy Purnell, a friend of mine who passed away in 2018. Her work has been donated to me to sell for charity as well, by the way. But some
Yeah.
sculptures could take months, like literally months, not days. And other people have art, like say the one behind you, for example. That's
Yeah.
something you say you could do in a couple hours. But are you
Right.
an artist like you go back and say I have to add another little bit to that, and you go back and you look at it again and say I have to add another little bit to that? Is it ever
Yeah.
complete, like a church in Barcelona, or you just say it's done?
There's an innate feeling to that when you're doing art, right? You look at your painting and you say, okay, how much have I put into it? Some of these paintings, like the one behind me, is around 27 layers of paint on a canvas.
Okay, okay,
My style is kind of looking at the art, feeling it, and saying, okay, well, there is an image in there. There is a contrast that speaks to a completed project. And there are some
mm,
that I look at and I say, well, no, that's got to be redone. And so those I won't put up for sale. And the ones that I know are completed, like the one
okay.
behind me, it glows in the dark.
Oh, it's
So there's
beautiful.
enough
Yeah,
sunlight here, it'll soak up some sun and then turn off the lights, it'll glow.
yeah. That one. We call that one. That's complete. That's finished. It's completed. It's done. It's finished. That particular
Right.
painting is complete. It's done.
Hmm.
It's completely finished.
There are some, especially like on my website, fallrivers.com. The one behind me is completely finished, and then
Okay,
there are others that are completely finished too. I've completed 100 of these already,
okay, very
about
good.
100 pieces.
That's substantial. I'm going to call Jimmy
Yeah.
to sing a song for you and for me. Jimmy Grady, he's only 13 years old, something like your age when you started singing. He's been singing on my podcast for the last 2 years.
Oh, the green and red of Mayo, I can see it still. Its soft and craggy boglands, its tall, majestic hills, where the ocean kisses Ireland and the waves caress its shore. Oh, the feeling it came over me to stay forevermore, forevermore. From its rolling coastal waters, I can see Patrick's Peak, where one Sunday every summer the pilgrims climb the reek, where St. Patrick in its solitude looked down across Clew Bay, and with the ringing of his bells called the faithful there to pray, there to pray. Oh, take me to Clare Island, the home of Granuel. Its water harbor fishes from the herring to the whale. And now I must depart it, and reality is plain. May the time not pass so slowly, for I'll set sail again, set sail again. Oh, the green and red of Mayo, I can see it still. Its soft and craggy boglands, its tall, majestic hills, where the ocean kisses Ireland and the waves caress its shore. Oh, the feeling it came over me to stay forevermore, forevermore. Forevermore.
Okay, let's get back to where we were. Now, where was I? Joan Rivers, but you're Falls Rivers. So, Fall River. So, how Fall River can people get in contact with you? And how can they buy your art? And where do you sell your art? Do you go to museums or art galleries, or where do you sell?
So mainly I like to do private sales. I like to do where I have my website, fallrivers.com. I've
Okay.
been in a couple galleries down south, down in Miami and West Palm, but obviously
Okay.
I'm living here. So it's not a consistent thing where I like to put things in galleries. They take a large percentage
They
sometimes,
do.
and I like to give that money more to charities
I agree.
or. So
Well, no,
it's just fallrivers.com, and most people can contact me through my email, iSpyFine, and any commissions or anything like that I typically have on personal number and personal
okay,
email.
that's right. Well, you're a very talented young man, to say the least. But with art
Yeah.
and music, I think you're extremely talented. I remember one guy that used to paint sunflowers, and he cut off his ear so he couldn't hear music. That'd be Vincent, of course. But he only became rich when he died. but you got the right approach to doing everything correctly. So Jimmy
Thank
is
you.
singing. I think you're a very talented young man, and you certainly have a future, to say the least. And we'll always pray for Joan Rivers as well.
Yeah, one day you'll see. I'm playing homage. Yeah, thank you. It's with a good humility and humbleness. You got to go about it, and when you don't really come from a whole lot, you have to step the right way sometimes. So
Well, I like that attitude too. I often say that actually. Like it's only when you're in the gutter you can see the stars.
yeah, definitely.
Never look down at another human being unless you're helping them up. So, have we anything else to add to your story today? Because it's your story, it's not my story.
My
In terms of
story,
the
I
music,
mean,
well, I think we covered the music, we covered the art, like the
yeah,
inspiration.
yeah.
Like I forgot to ask you about the inspiration for the art.
I'm
Like
sorry,
the
John.
art,
I didn't catch that last part.
that's okay, don't worry. The inspiration for the art, like how do you say I'm going to paint this today?
Inspiration for the art. It's very interesting because a lot of these pieces, I have this and I have other ones on the other side. I typically start two at the same time. So my
Okay.
inspiration is almost, it's looking into emotion is the way that I like to express the art.
Okay.
It's like that. It's like my writing. I have over 55 compiled books that I'm trying to turn poetry into, books and things like that. I have them written out. And you've seen my poetry before. You've seen my handwriting.
Yes.
So, other than I tried the voice once, I didn't make it all the way, but I did well. I got to the second round back in 2017. And, yeah, other than that, I have about 200 songs already written, ready to record and sell. So it's things like that that I keep. I always do it. It's always an inspiration. I think life itself gives me the inspiration every day I wake up, and
That's very important.
I feel it. And I very much enjoy the city because I meet people like you, John. I meet you, and I can feel the energy you give me. I can go into any bar and understand the people there, what they're going through sometimes. And it's those types of interactions that allow me to come back home and express what I've been able to touch or understand in others.
So another idea I have for you is, and this came from another podcast guest that has been on here, Brian Layden, is my historian. He's my historian confidant here. And we went through all the Irish poets, all the famous Irish poets, every single one, pretty much. And we found, well, I found, I guess, with the conversation, that Patrick Kavanagh, a famous Irish poet, wrote a beautiful poetry about where his girlfriend dumped him on Raglan Road, which is in Dublin. And you'd imagine it's kind of, but girls dump guys and guys dump girls. But Kavanagh, being Kavanagh, the poet, he wrote it and it's beautiful. But he couldn't sing, just like me, I cannot sing. I can admire your poetry, of course, but I cannot sing. But Kavanagh was very clever, so he gave his poetry to a singer called Luke Kelly, and then Luke Kelly turned Kavanagh's work into a famous song called On Raglan Road. So my inspiration for you today is you should give some of your poetry to other singers and let them say, okay, I can sing that song, or I can make something out of it. Like you do the hard work, okay, but someone else can pick it up. Like I know you might say it's plagiarism, but that's how I got through university. I copied someone else's homework. Well,
Yeah.
it's one way of doing
Yeah,
it.
I think that's a great idea. I think that's a great idea. I have a surplus of material, and I think
Well,
it'd
if
be
you have a
great
surplus
to.
material, yeah, you should spread the word, and you're
Yeah,
always welcome
exactly.
back on this podcast anytime that you want to. Maybe next time you come back, maybe we'll hear you sing a few songs, okay?
Definitely. That or recite any poetry. Who knows?
And yes, poetry is always good. And like the Irish history, my English is not my first language. I apologize. I don't need to apologize for that because I have better English than the Queen of England, but that's easy. She's dead. But Gaelic is my first language, so I usually sign off on Gaelic. So if we're done today, the Falls River, I'm going to say goodbye to you, and we'll
Okay.
meet again. And I usually
We
sign
will
off
meet
in my
again.
and that means Shin Scale, means that's a story. Agus Be Scéile means we will have another story. Agus Slán, which means goodbye, and Song of Fall. So Fall, goodbye to now. Sonawali, good talking to you.
Thank you, John.
Okay.
Take
We're
care.
all done.
Take your breath away, so hot, I love to melt the pain in waves. In this bed where we lay, let us smile, let us play. Pleasures in the morning rays, finally